topic of the show this week is going to be end-of-season player values. Robby usually leads the way, but on this one, we're going to talk about the quarterback position, and I want Robby to go first on this because if you have listened to – if you know me, if you've listened to me, I have slightly pontificated about this a little bit. So I want to get Robby's take on these two quarterbacks that we're going to talk about. We can talk about them together, Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. Robby.
Yeah. So these are two quarterbacks, and I think we have to talk about them both. And the reason we're doing these specific players for end-of-season player values is there's a handful of guys every year that either underperform or overperform. And when you look at those performances in contrast to previous years, you have to kind of decide, is this year an outlier? Is this year the new standard? How do you project those people going forward? And I think the guys that we've selected will have a lot of variance in your startups and a lot of variance in your trades coming up. And so we kind of carefully selected these players to talk about because I think there's a lot of variance. And so with that said, starting with Carson Wentz, what a story. I think the entire Eagles, have been, and as we've noted about on a weekly basis, Tom, they've been quite the story. But I think Carson Wentz is kind of just the crux of I don't know if deterioration is the right word, but just of things falling apart there, especially from his dynasty value aspect. Now, we only have December's DLFs, December ADP. They've started doing January's, but they haven't compiled it all, and so I wasn't able to pull that data in. But as of December, he was QB 15, and I can only imagine, Tom, that he's going to fall even further than that. After we saw a couple starts from Jalen Hurts with mixed results, but sticking on Wentz, a lot has changed. I think when you look from week 16 to 17 to where we are now, because at the beginning it was, Jalen Hurts is getting named as a starter, on a weekly basis, and it's not he's the starter the rest of the year. They're still kind of deciding, and then he has some good performances, and they're still waiting. Doug Peterson isn't saying he's the quarterback for the rest of the year. He's doing it on a week by week basis, and then he comes out week 16. And he kind of defends Wentz before they even get to week 17. He says, I want to fix this offense. I want to fix, our quarterback problems. And I have a ton of confidence in Carson. It just hasn't been working out yet. And so, from my perspective, pre-week 17, I was like, I can see a scenario with a good offseason and, some good reps, and maybe Jalen doesn't have the best finish of the season. I'm not ruling out that Carson Wentz may not be the starter next year, but as we get more information now, week 17 looks like he's looking for a trade. There's a lot of questions, and I'm sure you can go into it with week 17's, handling of the quarterback situation, and they put in third stringer Nate Sudfeld. And so I just think that situation's kind of changed a little bit from my initial thought with Wentz, but I don't think that's necessarily bad for his value, right? Is his value best with the Eagles or potentially with a team like, Indianapolis or, some of these other teams in New England or something like that. So, in a long-winded statement, I think that there's obviously good potential for him to move on and start elsewhere. And I think if the buy window maybe is closed a little bit with these more recent developments of him probably looking for a trade, but I do think this is a player that I'm still personally interested in. I've seen when Wentz is good, he is good Wentz, and this year has been bad. And a lot of that's him, and a lot of that's also the offense. But it's still someone I'm looking to acquire for an early 2021 second in Superflex leagues.
There's so much that went wrong with the Eagles season this year. Carson Wentz he's going to take most of the blame because he was a quarterback. And I'm not saying he looked good because he looked really bad, but his wide receivers didn't do him any favor. His play calling did not do him any favor. To give you an example of what he's dealing with all season, he said multiple times throughout the season that he felt more comfortable on the move instead of standing there in the pocket, because when he's standing there in the pocket, they're just getting instant penetration. Finally, they benched Carson Wentz, and the next two games, it's Jalen Hurts on designed rollouts. And Doug had basically said, well, we don't really have a lot of those plays. And I'm like, well, did you only call 2 plays for Jalen Hurts? So there's a lot of issues there. Peterson's coming back. It looks like Roseman's coming back, which brings me to my next point. Carson Wentz's value will go up if he is traded, no matter where he goes, because that Eagles team is in a lot of trouble for the next 2 years minimum. They're old, they're expensive, they're injury prone, and they're not good. If If you bring Doug back for another year, it doesn't make sense because he doesn't have anything to work with to actually win him games. So he's going to get fired next year. And then you have Jalen Hurts as the quarterback. Is the new coach going to want Jalen Hurts at quarterback? I don't know, because the new coach usually wants him to do that. So everything is bleak around me for both of these players. If I was going to go buy somebody, it would probably be Carson Wentz as opposed to Jalen Hurts, because he's going to cost less for you. And if he gets traded, he has a much better opportunity to thrive there. If he does not get traded, he's probably going to be the starter by default, in my opinion, because they're going to think that they're going to be doing more with him. They just fired Rich Scangarello, who was an offensive assistant, like a senior offensive assistant, who they brought in to work with Carson, and they fired Marty Morningweg, who worked with Jalen Hurts mostly. So now you have two of the guys that worked with them a lot got fired. Press Taylor is another guy who is probably going to get fired, in my opinion, and he should be fired. So they're going to have some new voices in there. If Doug can convince them to not trade them, that he wants them both to have like an open competition, then I think Carson's going to wind up winning that job. But I have no idea if Carson wants to be here. There's conflicting reports. Honestly, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess here. So if you can acquire one of them, I'd acquire Wentz because he's more likely to move on. And Jalen Hurts, he's not going to have a lot around him. If they take a wide receiver at 6, that means they don't have any offensive linemen to protect him. If they take a position other than that, then I don't know. I'm wearing this Eagles sweatshirt. I have all these Eagles things. I've watched every single snap for the last God knows how many years. And I am just straight up Negadelphia right now because it is very negative in Philadelphia. It is not sunny.
No, it's not sunny. But, I think what you're describing, especially in the scenario if they both are to remain on this team, I think it creates a big buy window, like you're saying, for both these guys, where there's more question, there's more potential variance with that price that you acquire, price to acquire them. I think, like I said before, I think Carson Wentz, I would be trading for him for a 2021 second in Superflex leagues. And here's another thing, that I wouldn't do that until if you are trying to acquire him, these picks just gain more and more. This is kind of moving into rookie talk for just a second. These picks are going to continue to gain value as we lead up to the NFL draft. Now, once they have NFL drafts late April and they have landing spots, some of those picks now go down because there's people that build in, like we were talking about earlier in the show, the landing spot, and that decreases their value. So I think the best time to trade these rookie picks, if you're set, you don't need the youth, you want to buy veterans, that is right before that late April real NFL draft. So, just kind of quickly touching on Hurts, he had some up games, he had some down games. I think the one thing that I noticed is he was consistently able to move the ball downfield, but his accuracy was just all over the place. Sometimes you'd see absolute dimes. Sometimes you'd see him miss completely, easy throws. I mean, he had a completion percentage of 55%. I think that I'm not sold with him yet, and that's fine because he only had 4 or 5 games, so there's still room for him to grow if he is potentially that starter down the road. But I'm definitely, like you, I think I'm urging individuals to look at Wentz because I do think, like you said, if he's traded, value goes up. If he stays, I do think there's still potential for him to be that starting quarterback in 2021.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts, a lot of his value is going to come from his legs. So with an entire offseason for Peterson to design an offense around him and around doing that with a moving quarterback, not necessarily a run-first quarterback, but a running back who can use his legs. Kyler's not a run-first quarterback at this point in his career, but he will still run the ball between 9 and 14 times in any given game. If we can see that from Jalen Hurts, where it's not like Lamar's first season, then I think fantasy-wise he should be sustainable. But again, you have to look at what he's going to be getting with his arm. And that's what concerns me. And it's not necessarily Jalen Hurts. Although he had his issues, I can still chalk a lot of his issues up to, a single lick of time because of his offensive line was horrible. And then by then his wide receivers were just a mess. and Peterson wasn't doing him any favors at all with the run game. How you abandon the run game with this kid, a rookie quarterback in his second start or third start, and Miles has eight carries and he's got 60 yards, and then he gets one more carry or two more carries the rest of the game. He's not getting any favors. So if the coaching staff has if they look at themselves and say, okay, this is what we need to do with Jalen to actually make this offense work better and design something around him that works, and they stick with it, then he can be better than Carson as far as a fantasy asset because of the added bonus with his legs. But it's not going to be next year because the entire team's just too big of a mess.
Yeah, completely agree there.